Welcome back in for another episode of the Ball Boys podcast, coming at you on a Friday, our first 2-episode week. We had the recap episode this past Tuesday. If you missed that, we broke down everything Aaron Rodgers and the Jets' future, how dominant the Cowboys and 49ers were, and, the Packers. We talked about our best bets, which we will get into later in the show, and we'll get into our records there. But we got to start the show today, Nolan, with, of course, the Thursday night football recap. The Philadelphia Eagles, their home opener, they played host to the Minnesota Vikings. And normally I defer to you here, but I do just want to go first today. Just a simple.
Take the floor.
I want to go first today. The amount of chatter that I see hating on the Eagles, and it's even from the network we're on that has Cowboys futures. So, hopefully we don't lose our jobs here. But the amount of chatter that I see hating on a team who has played perhaps some of their worst football over the last, we'll say, 6 quarters combined, and is 2-0 is crazy. What could go wrong in the passing game, besides, again, about 2 quarters, has. Jalen Hurts hasn't looked like the MVP player that he looked like last year. The defense is facing injuries in the secondary from a starting safety in Blankenship, a starting corner in Bradbury, a starting linebacker in Nakobe Dean, and now the starting running back, Kenny Gainwell, missed time. Now, obviously, DeAndre Swift did what DeAndre Swift did, and we were petitioning for him to get more reps. So I'm not going to completely throw the Gainwell one in there. But for a team that clearly has a little hangover, clearly didn't play their guys in the preseason, to be this good, to be 2-0, as well, I feel like Brian Johnson, the OC, it's Philly. And I'm going to admit, I was one of the people that was like, all right, this guy's done. But 2 new coordinators, it takes a little bit of time. The D coordinator, it's still taking him a little bit of time. But I thought Brian Johnson figured it out. I thought for some reason it took him a game and a half to realize that this is a run-first team. But once you establish the run, the play action was there. And I sent it in my fantasy football league chat. We're all Eagles fans talking about it, and everybody's calling for Brian Johnson to be fired at that point. They said, this is terrible, this sucks. It was right around when the Eagles went down 10-7. And I said, verbatim, I can do the play calling if he'd like. All we need to do is run the ball, establish the run, and then the play action and RPO will open up. That's simple with this team. You have the line to do it. And that's what he started doing, and it started working. You establish the run. DeAndre Swift getting about 5-6 yards a carry. You had Boston Scott before the concussion getting about 5 yards a carry. Rashad Penny didn't quite get 5 yards a carry, but maybe that's why he's the 4th running back on the depth chart. And then you had it open over the top. Devonta Smith, that long touchdown after establishing the run. I think the Eagles are going to be fine. The Eagles also have a really light schedule to open up the season. Obviously, they had these first 2 games. Now they have a real extended rest because their next game is on Monday Night Football versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. After that, it's Commanders. I forget who they play the week after that, but then I know the Rams. Then it's the Jets. Then it's the Dolphins. So by week 7, it's a legit team coming to town. But, with Zach Wilson, are the Jets going to be legit? The defense will be, but that front 7 for Philly, they got home on Kirk Cousins. They didn't get over 2.5 sacks, but the pressure was there. I just, I feel good about where we're at. Do you?
Oh, for sure, bro. You said exactly kind of like what I was thinking last night. It's tough because when you have 2 new coordinators, a lot of different pieces on the defensive side, not necessarily the offense, but defense. You have to get those reps in. It doesn't matter if you're the Chiefs, the Eagles, even the Chiefs. Look at the Chiefs last week. I know Kelsey was out, but they were struggling. It's week 1. So good teams find a way to win. And that's what the Eagles did last night. and they involved the run game a lot last night. Swift, I'm a Kenny Gainwell guy. I have him in my fantasy leagues, so I wasn't the biggest Swift guy looking at him last night, but he looks amazing last night. I think that's what they really missed out on last week and this week. Obviously, before the second half started. But if they could get that going throughout the season, I think they should be pretty fine. Um, I did see. I'm not sure you didn't mention the AJ Brown little thing on the sideline. I see a lot of people talking about him and Hurts, but like, he's an alpha receiver, bro. So if he doesn't get the ball, he's gonna start doing that. But it's nothing big, and people are gonna make it like a big deal.
I will
So
also say, if you noticed right after that, he had not one but 2 touchdowns called back.
yeah.
So while the stat line doesn't look like Jalen resolved the issue,
Mm,
we see this happen, like you said, all the time with wide receiver ones. They know
yeah.
the playmakers that they are. They want
Hmm.
the ball. It's tough when you're a team like Philly that does have 2 wide receiver ones at this point. Devonta Smith, you know, we've heard the hype all offseason. He's looked great. Now, when you have co-wide receiver ones and your quarterback's not playing the best, somebody's stats are missing out. And it was AJ last night, but like you said, they'll be fine.
Yeah, and the D line played great. I know that the O lines that they played have been injured, but even so, they've looked very dominant. And if they could keep that up, I expect good things. So I mean, next week they play the Bucks Monday night, and if they're very lucky, I will say that they're playing a very weak schedule to start the season. Kind of get their turns in reps. So hopefully by the Dolphins game, I'm not looking ahead, but they play the Rams, Bucks, and the Commanders. So if they get those three other wins down, they should be ready for the Dolphins.
Yeah, we don't have the jet start to the season. I'll say that. I do want to just touch on the Vikings here.
Yeah.
Going into my playoff predictions, I had them in as a wild card team at 9-8. Right now, I don't think they make it. I think Green Bay is clearly a better football team than them, and I'd have Green Bay in over them. The Vikings were 11-0 in one-score games last year. They're 0-2 this
Hmm.
year. That pendulum swings, and you come back to the mean of things, and you lose a weapon in Dalvin Cook. You lose a veteran presence in Adam Thielen. The defense was weak last year. It's weak again this year, especially in the secondary. You can't win games on the back of just Justin Jefferson. And I do think Jordan Addison's a great player. I do think he'll establish himself. Obviously, TJ Hawkinson had a good game. But like you said, the O-line, weak. The defense, weak. Kirk Cousins, not a game changer, a game manager. And if he was on San Francisco, sure. But there's just not the roster around this
Yeah. I
Minnesota
saw
team this year.
somebody call Kirk Cousins a top five quarterback after watching last night. And that was my reaction. I said, okay, whatever. Do you think that this is the last year of Justin Jefferson in Minnesota?
No, I
You think he
think
stays?
I think that team sooner trades Kirk Cousins than lets Jefferson go anywhere. I think Jefferson's going to get the fattest wide receiver contract in NFL history, and we're for good or for bad coming to a slippery slope in the NFL where it's going to be like the NBA, where you just get the max money as soon as you can from your own team, and then if you
Hmm.
want to bounce, you tell them you want to bounce, like Damian Lillard did. But I don't see Jefferson leaving Minnesota anytime soon, if I'm being honest. I think he definitely gets that second contract and plays through it there. I think they're a team that, is in contention to trade for Kyler Murray this offseason or trade Kirk Cousins away this season. Um, you mentioned the Jets as a potential team. The Vikings start the season 1-5.
Hmm.
If the Jets could create the cap space for him, maybe Kirk Cousins goes there if they start the year 3-3 with that brutal start to the schedule. Or I don't know, Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt. There's a plethora of things that could happen where Kirk Cousins is on the move. Maybe the team's in the Caleb Williams, Drake May stake, or maybe they're the team that goes and gets Kyler this offseason. Either way, you have the weapons, Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. You're going to keep those guys happy. And if they don't want Kirk, they don't want Kirk. But we do got to look ahead here to Sunday now. We got a good slate of games. No shock there. Week 2. I think the football will be better played than last week. Hopefully, we get some better weather conditions.
Yeah.
So, of course, we got our best bets that we'll save for the end. Obviously, we don't talk about them beforehand. So, if we get to a game and it's your best bet, you just let me know. We won't know what side you're on. But Raiders Bills, that one is in my slip. I don't know if it's in yours, but I'm going to move past it for the time being. Ravens Bengals divisional game. Baltimore travels on the road to Cincinnati. Cincinnati is 3-point favorites currently. Does Cincinnati bounce back after last week? Because last year we saw them get off to an 0-2 start. They were slow again. But the Ravens are dealing with a ton of injuries right now. Their star tackle injured, J.K. Dobbins done for the year. Mark Andrews dealing with a quad injury. He's practiced twice this week, but he practiced all 3 times last week, so no real assurance that he'll play. Marlon Humphrey obviously missed week 1 with an injury. Marcus Williams, their safety, he's out with an injury for an extended period of time. Where are you leaning with this game?
It's tough, man. I'm a Ravens guy this year, but it's as close to a must win, I think, if it's possible, if you're the Bengals, because you already lost one divisional game week 1 against the
Yeah.
Browns. So if you lose this week, you're kind of in a bad spot. I've been back and forth. It's really tough. If I had to pick a team right now, I would probably take. Let me make sure. Yeah, I'll take the Ravens.
Yeah, money line or +3? I would take the Ravens +3.
Yeah, I'd take them +3. I would think they're gonna win, but I wouldn't be confident in money line, so I'd take the points there.
I think it's going to be a very close game.
Yeah, for
I'd be
sure.
shocked if Cincinnati's offense didn't look better than it did last week.
Hmm.
Obviously, Cleveland's defense is legit, and some of that is certainly attributed to that. However, the weather was just terrible
Yeah.
in that game versus Cleveland. Cincinnati, home opener, energy will be there.
Hmm.
Those guys will be motivated. I do think that they sneak out of there with the win, but, I'm thinking 24-21, 21-20, something real close, like along those lines. Chiefs, Jags, Kansas
This
City.
is
This is on your picks. We'll get back to it. Chargers, Titans. Chargers favored by 3 on the road. Austin Eckler looks like he might not be playing. DeAndre Hopkins looks like he might not be playing. So some offensive weapons for both teams missing. For the Chargers defense, Joey Bosa, DNP, both days. Eric Hendricks, DNP, both days. So weekend Chargers defense as well. Tennessee, home opener. Both teams 0-1. Both teams looking to be in the AFC playoff picture. As much as we said that we didn't think Tennessee was going to be there, it's still early in the season. They feel like they can be there. However, what we saw last week from Ryan Tannehill was bad. The Chargers looked good in defeat. The Titans looked bad in defeat. And that's really where I land on this. -3, I'd much rather it at -2.5 with the way that the Chargers play football. That's why I didn't bet it. But the Chargers are a much more talented team. Justin
mhm.
Herbert, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnson, Josh Kelly looked great last week. You still have Derwin James, J.C. Jackson, who got the pick, Khalil Mack. I feel much better about this Chargers team than I do the Titans, especially with how bad Tannehill looked. Tajay Spears out-snapping Derrick Henry. Now, those weren't necessarily valuable snaps, but if the team loses their wide receiver 1, how much do the Chargers stack the box? When we talked about the Titans this offseason before the Hopkins trade, we said this offense is going to be very stagnant like they were last year. Well, now it looks like they might be without DeAndre Hopkins. Do you feel any differently about this game? Do you feel like the Titans might take the home opener?
Yeah, I mean, I think if Hopkins plays, I'd be a little worried if I was a Chargers fan because that secondary looked pretty toasty. I know they played the Dolphins, but still, they struggled a lot. But if he doesn't play, I think the Chargers should be able to pull this one out. It's a must win for both teams. And I think that with the way that the Chargers played last week, I know Eckler didn't play, but Kelly looked great, like you said. So he should be able to fill in. And I think Tannehill just, you know how I feel about the Titans and Tannehill. So I
Yeah.
think they should be able to be kind of fine, even though it's in Tennessee. So
Yeah, teams that start 0-2, I believe they have about an 8% shot
mm.
of making the postseason. So one of these teams will be leaving this game with an 8% shot of making the postseason. I'm going to skip over Packers Falcons here. Seahawks Lions. Detroit favored by 4.5 points. The last two meetups between these teams have been absolute shootouts. I believe the Seahawks won both times. One of them was like 51-24, and one of them was like 48-45. So these teams put up numbers when they play each other in Detroit. Don't need to worry about weather. Nice dome game. The Seahawks 0-1, obviously, with that loss to the Rams in stunning fashion. The Lions 1-0, beating the Chiefs, perhaps also in stunning fashion. I don't think anybody will be shocked that I'm leaning Detroit here. I've been calling it. The Seahawks are overrated. They are not the team you think they are. I think Aiden Hutchinson's able to get home a ton today. And that D line versus the Lions O line, 30th ranked for Seattle and top 5 for Detroit. I expect Detroit to have their way. I expect Jared Goff to have a ton of time in the pocket. I expect some running lanes to be there. And I wouldn't be shocked if Detroit dominated this game, to be quite frank. But I do think points will be put up because I do think the wide receivers can get deep for Seattle. It's just a matter of if Geno will have time to get the ball to them simply. But I'm leaning Detroit here.
Yeah, I think it's tough for me because I think Seattle is a decent team. Obviously, they've really bad trouble with O line and D line, but those I think it was 4.5 points. Let me check. Four and a
Yeah,
half.
it's 4.5.
I really like that line. It's not in my best bets, but I really think that Seattle covers that. I know that Hutchinson, that D line and the Lions does scare me against that O line, but I think they have enough firepower. You know, even DK Metcalf said he didn't play his best, so I think they kind of take accountability and they kind of know that they got to show up on Sunday against Detroit, and I think that they cover and maybe even win.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Seahawks are 0-1. If you start off 0-2,
Mm-hmm.
even in the NFC, your playoff shots go real down. Two 0-1 teams, divisional game, Colts, Texans. Texans, the line looks like they're now favored by 1. It started the week at a pick'em. Battle of rookie quarterbacks, Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman, no Jonathan Taylor again versus CJ Stroud, Damian Pierce. I'm sure you'll send this one out on Twitter, but battle of mid for this game. You know, I lean the Colts just because Anthony Richardson looked better than CJ Stroud in week 1. But honestly, I wouldn't be shocked either way. And the only way this game's going to enter my TV is on Red Zone Octo, Octo channel, for being honest. But do you have a lean in this one?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
You know, I think obviously I'm a big AR guy. I'm not the biggest Stroud guy, but that Texans defense did look pretty good last week, and I think they're at home, right? It's in Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if I had to pick, I think I might lean Houston actually. Just that because that defense did look kind of ferocious with with D'Amico running the shots there.
Yeah, I don't hate the logic. Chicago, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay
Oh,
favored by 2.5 in this
mm.
one after their stunner over the Vikings. The Bears looked like the team we expected them to look like, but the public didn't. 0-1. I don't hate the Bears here. I don't think the Buccaneers, I called them this year Seahawks. The Seahawks were 9-8 last year. So I don't think Tampa's going to go on a tear and win every single game or nothing like that. Baker Mayfield came out and said that he figured out what defense the Vikings are running every single time in the second half, and they only won the game by 3. I'm not sure if it's a positive or a negative. It's great that you figured it out, but you didn't really do much with it.
Mm-hmm.
For Chicago, not must win because I don't know what the expectations were for this team. I'd love to get a Bears fan on here and talk about like what the expectations really were because
Mm-hmm.
for me the expectations were, hey, win 6 games and it was a successful year because you just had the number 1 pick. Have Justin Fields show you something. I know a lot of Bears fans are mad. In that game last week, only one designed quarterback run for Justin Fields. What are they doing? You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can't take away what this guy's strength is. You have to play into it. It feels very much like what the Broncos did to Russell Wilson last year, where they said, hey, don't run around the ball. We paid you. We want you to be a pocket passer. All right, well, now you have a mid quarterback because what made Russell Wilson was his mobility. Same thing here with Justin Fields. I expect the offense to look better for the Bears, more cohesive. I expect Tampa Bay to look roughly the same, but it feels like a pick 'em game. Um, I I would lean Chicago, but like only if I had to bet the game.
Yeah, I'm on the same side. It's very suspect because I wasn't a big Bucks guy this year. They had a big win last week. Their D line looked actually decent. I'm not sure because it was the Vikings O line, but I think they're at home, so I think that's the only reason why I'd give them the edge, and I think I'd take the Bucks just because they're at home.
Yeah. Giants Cardinals. I'm gonna skip over this one. Niners Rams. The Rams are the home team. The Niners are favored by 7.5. Uh, Emerging star wide receiver Puka Nakua dealing with an oblique
Puka.
injury now, so
Mhm.
everybody that used their waiver on him in fantasy may not
Yeah.
get to play him. Obviously, the 49ers, you could argue they looked like the best team in football last week. They were dominant. The Rams got the stunning win over Seattle. Maybe they're legit. You still have Matt Stafford now healthy. Sean McVay drawing up the offense. The offense looked really good last week. Aaron Donald. You got some okay pieces on that defense. We were hating on them, but to only give up 13 points to Seattle in Seattle is something. I kind of like the Rams plus 7.5. I know it sounds gross, and it's not in my picks because of how gross it is. But if you forced me to bet it, divisional game, early in the season, one team coming off a really high, feeling like the top of the world, traveling back to the West Coast. I don't know, man. A full 7.5. I get the touchdown with the home team, with a veteran quarterback and a great head coach. And I believe the stat is this early in the season, road divisional opponents favored by a touchdown or more are 0-5. It doesn't happen often, but they're 0-5 against the spread.
Well, it's gonna be 1-5 because there's no shot that I see the Rams covering this. Puga's hurt. Even if he does play, that Niners team looked gross.
I know it's
Um,
gross, but 20-14 they cover.
all right, so look, we'll come back to this on Tuesday. And I'm gonna be like, I told you.
I didn't put it in my bet, so
No,
it won't count against me record
I
wise.
understand. I understand, but I'm just saying I'd be shocked. I think the Niners win at least by 2 touchdowns. I think it's not even close.
Hey, you could be right. Jets at Cowboys. Uh, Dallas favored by 9.
My
It feels
Jets,
like a
man.
very similar situation. And you know what? I'm going to say it. I don't hate the Jets plus 9. And I get it. We just watched Dallas win a 40-0 football game. But what do we know about teams in the NFL? They come back down to the medium. And the Jets did win an emotional game. But I like the plus 9 because of that defense, man. Do you see that defense allowing more than 24 points to Dallas? With
No.
Dak, I mean, I know how you
Mm-mm.
feel about Dak, and they're good at stopping the run. So if they don't give up more than 24 points to cover the 9-point spread, all they got to do is score 15. That Dallas defense is good. I,
Yeah,
it
the
could be.
the Dallas defense might
The
score.
defenses are so good that I feel like we could be in store for a very low scoring affair.
Mhm.
It very much feels like it could be a 17-7 game, which that wouldn't cover the spread. But if it's 17-10, you know what I mean? It's when I project the scoring to be so low and one team's almost getting 10 points, I just feel like that's the right spot to ride with. I do think Dallas ultimately wins the game. I'm not picking the Jets to win, but 10 points, 9 points, that's a lot of points.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. I think too many points for me. The only thing that worries me is Zach Wilson giving the Dallas defense some points.
Yeah,
So if that doesn't happen, I think they should be able to cover, in my opinion.
I don't want to say that I believe in Zach Wilson because it's not the case. I don't believe in him like leading this team, turning it around, but I believe in him in cutting down the turnovers from the last time we saw him as the starter. I think that the offense is going to be very much schemed for him to get the ball out quickly and not have to make a lot of decisions. I think it's going to be a lot of, is your first reading Garrett Wilson open? No, dump it off to Dalvin Cook or Brees Hall. And I feel like that's what we're going to see a lot of in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brees Hall and Dalvin Cook, they're out there a lot. And I think the Jets are going to try and dominate the time of possession. That's how this team's going to have to win games. It's going to have to be very gritty. You know, they said that they were the 85 Bears. Well, now you have to be,
Mm-hmm.
or else you're cooked. Commanders at Broncos. Not in your picks? Okay. Denver favored by 3.5. The Commanders 1-0 travel. Broncos 0-1. Jerry Jeudy looks like he's going to play. So Russell Wilson should have his wide receiver one back. 3.5. If I had to, I'd swallow the points, I suppose. Chase Young looks like he might be back. But again, the Broncos are desperate. The Commanders are not. I feel like this has got to be a Broncos win here. Javonte Williams looked decent last week coming off that injury. Having Jerry Jeudy will really open things up for this offense. And their defense was still good last week. Only gave up 17 points. Realistically, they only lost that game officially because of a missed extra point. Who knows what would have happened in overtime, but they didn't get fully outplayed. That's what I'll say. So I have faith in the Broncos. I do think that they're a better team than the Commanders, who almost lost to the Cardinals last week. So I'm rolling with Broncos country.
Yeah, I agree. Just for the Commanders, they won last week. Broncos are in desperation mode at home, West Coast. And I think with the Broncos thing is Jerry Judy's back. That's a huge help for us. And they didn't play horrible last week, and I think that defense, Sam Howell did struggle a little bit against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And I think the Broncos kind of really hone in on that against him this week and give him some trouble. So I take the Broncos there.
Yeah, we got Dolphins at Patriots, Sunday night football game. Dolphins 1-0, favored by 3 in Belichick's house. I don't know, man. I got a sneaky feeling. It's not one of my bets, but I got a sneaky feeling that the Pats walk out of this game with a win. And maybe this is how the Eagles haters sounded last week, but we kind of saw the formula on how to stop Tua last year and stop this air raid offense. And I didn't get to watch that Chargers game to know if it happened, but I know the Patriots have the personnel. You just got to send a lot of heat and push them guys off the line. And Belichick will know that. Belichick's very famous for taking away your number one option.
Mm-hmm.
Tyreek Hill, I expect him to have a more down game. Maybe gets one big catch and it looks better, but he's going to have to work. And I don't know, man. It feels like a very sneaky Patriots win on Sunday night.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat actually. I think just for the reasons you said, bro, like I think they're at home, Sunday Night Football. They did play pretty well last week. I know the Eagles, they struggled a little bit, had to get some reps in, but still they didn't look too bad. And Mac Jones especially, like I think he looked kind of decent. And I think this week, if he plays as well as he did last week in the second half, I think they have a decent shot to win. And like you said, you get pressure on Tua and we'll see what happens because the Chargers defense, I think they had the most, they easily had the most explosive plays allowed last week by like a landslide. And I don't think that's going to happen this week, with Christian Gonzalez and some studs on that defense. So I think I would take the Pats, I think, comfortably.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable about it, but it feels sneaky. It feels like that's the game where Vegas makes their money back.
Mm-hmm. Totally, I can totally see that.
Saints, Panthers on Monday Night Football. Keep it moving. And Browns, Steelers, are we keeping it moving for that? No? Talk about that? Okay. Browns, Steelers. We know the college kids, they love the Browns. Browns favored by 2.5 on the road in a divisional game. Browns are 1-0. They looked like the best team in the AFC North last week. And the Steelers, 0-1. We said about these 0-1 teams. Mike Tomlin never had a below 500 season. It's tough because everything on paper, I want to go Cleveland. But knowing the Mike Tomlin stuff and the division's real choppy, and I don't know, I'm staying away from it. If you forced me to bet, I'd probably go Cleveland just because I'd believe in the process of the experts at the college kids, but I don't want to bet it.
Yeah, no, I think if Cam Hayward and Deontay Johnson weren't hurt, I really would, I think, take the Pittsburgh Steelers, at home Monday night. They usually have the Browns number, but I think because of those injuries, they're gonna, especially Cam on defense, bro. That's not gonna help against Nick Chubb, and I think for that reason, I think I would take the Browns. I might
Yeah,
switch my pick by Monday. I'm just saying, but
yeah,
for right now, I think I would take the Browns.
yeah. Make sure you're tapped into us on Twitter. But Nolan, speaking of your picks, let's hear them. You were 1-2 last week, looking to get above 500 this week. Could easily be 4-2 with a 3-0 week. Let's hear your 2 picks and then finish it
All
off with
right,
your lock.
so because my pick was involving the Packers Falcons. Should I wait for when you talk about that, or just roll with it?
You roll with it. I won't change it.
All right, so I got Packers easily over the Falcons. Falcons looked horrible last week. I know they won by I think 2 touchdowns, but that didn't come till the fourth quarter. And the Packers looked great against the Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears. I know the Falcons are at home, a little troublesome, but I think the Packers cover. I really don't think that they should have.
Falcons are favored by 1.5 currently, so
Yeah.
more plus money on Green Bay.
Yeah, so I would take Packers money line. I think that they do that easily.
Are you betting? Are you doing the money line bet? Or are you
Oh
doing
yeah,
1.5?
Packers money line. This is no 1.5. No, it's no. So I think Packers money line for me. I think that they just they look like the better team last week. And they have the defense looked great. So I think the same thing plays out. Ritter kind of shows who he is, and it isn't good. So all right. So next on my list, I have let me make sure the line. Jaguars plus 3.5. I think they cover at home. I would not be surprised if they even won this game. The Chiefs didn't look that great last week, and the Jags we were both on that this year. We said possibly they could get the 1 seed, and AFC, it's kind of open for that. The Chiefs, if they could win this game, that's definitely a possibility. Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley looked amazing last week. Didn't miss a beat. Zay Jones looks like he could be a solid receiver too, surprisingly over Christian Kirk. And I know that Kelsey is questionable. I think would take the Jags even if Kelsey plays on that plus 3.5. So
Yeah, it's not in my pick, so I do want to talk about it. I am worried that if the Jags win the game outright, this is just the beginning to a Chiefs back-to-back Super Bowl documentary where they had an 8% shot to make the playoffs after week 2, and then they went on and then they
yeah.
that's how the doc starts. Chris Jones being back, I think it's huge. They needed him on defense. Travis Kelce, I'd be shocked if he didn't play. I think we're in for a really fun game. I think we're in for a very fun game. The divisional playoff game last year, sour taste in the Jags' mouth. Calvin Ridley, I expect him to continue to be good against this team. We saw what Amon-Ra St. Brown did. I think Calvin Ridley looks about the same. And they got weapons. Tank Bigsby, ETN, Zay Jones. I think it's a fun game. I just can't bet against Patrick Mahomes. But kudos to you for being able to.
That's fair. No, it's going to be a good game for sure. So excited for that. And my last lock of the week, this is my lock, Saints -3 Monday night against the Panthers. I think they roll the Panthers. JC Horn's out. I don't know who's covering Olave and Shaheed. He looked great. Michael Thomas looked great. And that Saints defense, I know Tannehill was playing, but they look kind of good. And they're playing Bryce Young. He struggled against, I don't think they're as good as the Saints defense, the Falcons defense. So I think -3 should be pretty good. They're an awesome, primetime team at home. That dome's gonna be rocking,
I
and I'm
believe
gonna
it's
take
in
the Saints.
Carolina. I believe it's in Carolina. That
Oh
is it.
boy, it
It's
is
in
in Carolina.
Carolina.
Okay, well, I look like a clown.
Yeah, you're all
Okay,
good.
so besides that, I still would take the Saints. It's a home opener, I know, I guess, for the Panthers, but I still think the Saints win that game pretty
Yeah,
convincingly,
I
and
don't hate the pick.
I'm going with it.
I was high on the Panthers coming into the year. J.C. Horn out multiple weeks. Brian Burns still waiting for a contract, not playing. Your two best players on defense against a good offense. The Tennessee defense is underrated. The Saints still got out of there with the win. They have a lot of explosive playmakers. It's on at 7:15 alongside another Monday night game, which I think is going to be a lot better. Like you said, I think Olave has a huge night. I'm sad about the Panthers, man. It's only week 2, and I'm sad about that pick.
That's how I feel about the Vikings, man.
I couldn't bring myself to bet against them in the home opener, but we will move forward to my bets here. Last week I went 2-1. All right. So we both went Packers Falcons. I'm taking the Packers plus 1.5. No reason for me to go money line. Listen, if the Packers lose 21-20, I get the win. You don't. That's all I know. But for all the reasons you said, I'll reiterate it. The Falcons, they played worse competition last week. The final score wasn't indicative of how close that game was, and their Panthers defense is weakened. We just mentioned it. No Brian Burns, no J.C. Horn, and they had to run the ball. They're not going to be able to run the ball like that against Green Bay. Green Bay's defense is legit, and I don't trust Desmond Ridder. I trust Jordan Love after last week, with or without Aaron Jones, with or without Christian Watson. I think this Packers team is better, and they're playing in a dome. I'll take them plus 1.5 as well. I'm taking the Bills to bounce back, man. I think they'll cover the 8.5. I think this is going to be a rally game. What do we know about good teams in the NFL? When they lose the week before in bad fashion, they come out and they look good and motivated. I think Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, I think it's a huge week for Buffalo. And the Raiders, a team that we thought was bad, gets a win in week 1. I think they come back down to the medium. I don't think this is a particularly close game. I think Buffalo might drop 40 on them. I could see this being like a 40-17 game. So I'll easily eat the 8.5. Feels like a big number, but Buffalo, we know what they are. They are a good football team, especially in the regular season. And whether you think that they're Super Bowl material, playoff material, whatever, they're better than the Raiders. That's what I do know. And my lock of the week, it feels gross after last Sunday night's performance, but I'm taking the Giants to cover 4. The Giants, I think, with Saquon Barkley, are going to be able to run the ball all over this Cardinals team. The Cardinals defense played better than expected. Ron Rivera doesn't lead an offense the way that Brian Daboll does, and the Commanders covered this same 4-point spread. They had a 7-point spread, the Commanders. They didn't cover. The Giants, it's at 4 because of what happened Sunday night. Again, they were a playoff team last year. They just got blown out 40-0. The strategy of taking a team that we know is better than what we saw from them last week after week 1 overreactions. I'm rolling with that again here with another New York team. I think the Giants win this game, probably something like 27-16. I don't think that the Giants feel like, they are NFC Championship caliber team after this game, but I think that they are a better team than the Cardinals for sure. So going over our picks again, we both got the Packers. Nolan said, give me the money line. I said, I'll take plus 1.5. Nolan said, give him the Jags plus 3.5. Maybe they might even beat the Chiefs. And as well, he took the Saints -3 for his lock of the week. For my other 2 picks, I went Buffalo -8.5, Giants -4. Book it, lock of the week. Be sure you comment down all your bets below. Remember, while we're having fun here, give the experts a follow. Follow the college kids on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. I'm out here grinding on the injury news. No one's out here grinding away on just fantasy content for y'all. If you have any fantasy questions, add them on Twitter. He's just, he's the meme god as well. We'll call it that. But make sure you're subscribed to this channel for all episodes of the Ball Boys podcast. And until next Tuesday, we'll see you guys. Peace.
Deuces.